Desert Eagle 1, the original 1983 patent. Every legendary handgun has an origin story worth knowing, but the Desert Eagle starts with a problem nobody else in the entire industry was even seriously trying to solve at the time: building a semi-automatic pistol powerful enough to fire genuine Magnum revolver cartridges. Something standard pistol mechanisms simply weren't built to handle safely or reliably. Bernard C. White of Minnesota-based Magnum Research, working alongside Latvian engineer Arnolds Strindbergs of the Riga Arms Institute, filed a U.S. patent in January 1983 for a gas-operated pistol mechanism, an approach one firearms writer later described vividly as an unholy union between an AR-15 and a Ruger Mini 14, somehow packed entirely into a single massive handgun chassis. Magnum Research designed it, but manufacturing the actual pistols fell to Israel Military Industries, who refined White's original patent into a producible design and began building the first Mark I models in 1983. Initially chambered only in .357 Magnum before .44 Magnum joined the lineup in 1986. Getting there wasn't instant either. Serious design work on a genuinely Magnum-capable semi-automatic pistol reportedly stretches back to the late 1970s, meaning the Desert Eagle that finally reached dealer shelves in 1983 represented years of failed attempts at solving the exact same underlying problem: a powerful pistol cartridge that conventional blowback and short recoil pistol designs simply couldn't cycle safely or reliably, no matter how the engineers of that era approached it. Every single early Desert Eagle sold in America during this period was actually manufactured in Israel, making the gun's now iconic Desert Sand namesake genuinely accurate to its country of origin for well over a decade before American manufacturing ever entered the picture at all. Desert Eagle 2, the gas-operated action. Nearly every semi-automatic pistol ever built, from a 1911 to a modern Glock, cycles using either straight blowback or a barrel that briefly tilts and locks with the slide under recoil before separating again. The Desert Eagle throws that entire playbook out entirely, running on a gas-operated system borrowed directly from rifle design instead, firing a round vent's high-pressure gas through a small port in the barrel, driving a fixed piston styled directly after the one inside a Ruger Mini 14, which in turn cams a 4-lug rotating bolt, nearly identical in concept to the bolt inside an AR-15, to unlock, extract, and chamber the next round. That rifle-grade mechanism is exactly what lets the Desert Eagle safely handle cartridges that would batter a standard recoil-operated pistol into an early grave after just a handful of shots fired through it. But it comes with a genuine downside working in the opposite direction entirely. Because cycling the action depends on gas pressure rather than a shooter's own grip absorbing recoil, the Desert Eagle is notoriously sensitive to limp wristing, meaning a loose or inconsistent grip can cause the action to short stroke and jam in a way most standard pistols simply tolerate far better. That same proven rotating bolt design didn't stay confined to one single pistol either. Israel Weapon Industries later borrowed the concept directly for its Tavor bullpup rifle, a genuinely rare case of a handgun's internal mechanism getting reused inside a completely different category of firearm years down the line. If you've ever wondered why a movie-famous pistol can still be genuinely misunderstood by the people who own one, that's the gap this channel keeps closing. Subscribe if you want. The next one explained the same way. Desert Eagle 3, the .357 Magnum. The Desert Eagle's very first chambering wasn't the massive cartridge most people picture today when they hear the name. It was .357 Magnum, a proven revolver round already trusted by police departments nationwide by the early 1980s for its balance of power and controllability. Choosing it first made practical sense for an untested, brand-new gas-operated design that had never before been proven reliable in field conditions. .357 Magnum generated enough pressure to reliably cycle the action without pushing an unproven mechanism straight to its absolute limit on day one. Early Mark I pistols in this chambering held 10 rounds in a single magazine, a genuinely startling capacity increase over the 6-shot revolvers firing the exact same cartridge, giving early Desert Eagle buyers meaningfully more firepower from a round shooters already understood and trusted. Magnum Research also offered the Mark I with a choice of 3 interchangeable barrel lengths, 6, 10, or a genuinely massive 14 inches, letting buyers pick anywhere from a range-friendly configuration up to something closer to a handheld carbine than any conventional handgun a shooter might otherwise expect. Desert Eagle 4. The .44 Magnum. Once Israel Military Industries proved the gas system could handle .357 reliably day in and day out under real-world conditions, Magnum Research added the caliber that would go on to define the entire pistol's public image just 3 years later, in 1986. Made instantly famous by Dirty Harry as the revolver round no one wanted pointed at them, .44 Magnum in a semi-automatic, magazine-fed pistol was a genuinely new proposition entirely, and the Desert Eagle became the gun that finally put it there, feeding 8 rounds instead of a revolver's traditional 6-shot cylinder. This exact chambering is also the one most responsible for the Desert Eagle's massive pop culture footprint, appearing in the hands of movie villains and action heroes throughout the 1990s, specifically because a .44 Magnum semi-auto looked and sounded more dramatic on camera than yet another revolver ever could. A .44 Magnum Desert Eagle tips the scales at roughly 4.2 pounds unloaded, noticeably heavier than the original .357 version, weight that comes directly from the reinforced frame and slide needed to safely cycle a considerably more powerful cartridge through that same gas-operated system. Desert Eagle 5. The .50 Action Express. 2 Magnum revolver cartridges apparently still weren't enough for Magnum Research's ambitions, and in the early 1990s, the company worked with ammunition designer Evan Wilden, who would go on to found his own ammunition company specifically off the strength of this one cartridge's success, to create an entirely new round, built specifically for this one pistol from the ground up. The .50 Action Express, a cartridge wide enough that Desert Eagles chambered for it need a visibly larger frame than the .357 and .44 versions just to accommodate the noticeably fatter magazine. Firing a 300-grain bullet at roughly 1,542 feet per second, the .50 AE dropped magazine capacity down to just 7 rounds. But the trade-off bought genuinely enormous stopping power and, more importantly for the gun's legend, an unmistakably massive muzzle flash and report that made it instantly identifiable on any shooting range from 50 yards away just by sound alone. This is the exact chambering behind nearly every biggest handgun in the world headline the Desert Eagle has ever generated over the past 4 decades. And it remains the caliber most casual observers picture the instant anyone even says the name Desert Eagle out loud, regardless of which specific version they've actually seen or fired themselves. Desert Eagle 6, the Mark XIX. 2 earlier generations, the original Mark I and the later improved Mark VII, eventually gave way to the Mark XIX, the version Magnum Research has kept in continuous production the longest and the one still sold brand new today. Weighing in at roughly 4.4 pounds unloaded, noticeably heavier than either earlier generation, the Mark XIX added an integral accessory rail and a slide cut compatible with modern red dot optics, modernizing a fundamentally 1980s design just enough to stay relevant as pistol optics became mainstream decades later. Manufacturing itself bounced across 3 different countries before finally settling down for good. Israel Military Industries built the earliest guns through 1995. Production shifted to Saco Defense in Maine for a few years afterward, moved back to Israel in 1998 under the newly renamed Israel Weapon Industries, and finally relocated permanently to Magnum Research's own facility in Pillager, Minnesota starting in 2009, a year before Carr Arms acquired the entire company outright in 2010. Confusingly, Magnum Research never actually stamps these Mark-level generation names anywhere on the gun itself, meaning most owners identify which version they're holding purely by cross-referencing features like the rail, the safety lever shape, and the barrel dovetail against reference photos online. A genuinely odd gap for a company selling one of the most recognizable handguns on the planet to leave unaddressed for so many decades running. Desert Eagle 7, the Baby Eagle. Here's a mix-up that trips up even experienced gun owners who should genuinely know better. The baby eagle isn't a scaled-down desert eagle at all, and shares essentially no internal mechanism with it whatsoever, despite what the shared name so strongly implies. What Magnum Research actually sells under the Baby Eagle and Desert Eagle pistol names is a rebranded Jericho 941, an Israeli service pistol built on a completely different conventional short recoil operating system directly derived from the CZ-75. With none of the big Desert Eagle's gas piston or rotating bolt anywhere inside it, the two guns share nothing but a visual family resemblance and a marketing name deliberately chosen to borrow the flagship Desert Eagle's fame, meaning a buyer expecting a compact version of that same rifle-grade gas system is in for a genuine surprise the first time they field strip one and find the completely conventional pistol action staring back at them instead. Magnum Research had a genuinely sound business reason for that branding decision, regardless of the confusion it caused. A smaller, lighter, cheaper to manufacture pistol, sold under an already famous name, moves off dealer shelves far more easily than the exact same gun launched under a completely unfamiliar one nobody has ever heard of before. Desert Eagle 8. The Reality Gap. Between video games calling it the Deagle and a seemingly endless parade of movie villains reaching for one on screen, the Desert Eagle occupies a strange spot very few real firearms ever manage to reach. More culturally famous by an enormous margin than it has ever actually been practically used. Its sheer weight, roughly the same as two standard duty pistols combined, along with genuinely stiff recoil in the larger calibers and a real sensitivity to limp wristing, has kept it almost entirely out of military and police service worldwide for over 4 decades now, with Poland's elite GROM counterterrorism unit standing out as one of the only military units on record that ever actually adopted it for real operational use, rather than simply testing and rejecting it. That gap between Hollywood ubiquity and real-world scarcity is precisely the point for most of the people who actually buy one today. Nobody picks a Desert Eagle for concealed carry or duty work. They pick it because firing the most cinematically famous handgun on the planet is, on its own, worth the price of admission. One veteran gunwriter summed up that exact appeal by calling the Desert Eagle the supermodel of handguns, gorgeous, dramatic, and undeniably impractical for anything resembling everyday concealed carry, and that description has aged remarkably well, considering the gun has spent over 4 decades being purchased almost entirely for the experience of owning and shooting it, rather than any genuine tactical or defensive need a buyer might otherwise cite.